I think it's just going to get weirder and weirder and weirder, and finally it's going to be so weird that people are going to have to talk about how weird it is. Eventually people are going to say, what the hell is going on? It's not enough to say it's nuts. You have to explain why it's so nuts. The invention of artificial life, the cloning of human beings, possible contact with extraterrestrials, the systems which are in place to keep the world sane are utterly inadequate to the forces that have been unleashed.
Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew. Today my guest is Campbell, aka AutoDidactic. Be sure and watch my films. Doors of Perception is on Amazon Prime. Occult Louisiana is on Tubi, Roku, Apple, and more. Visit our website, forbiddenknowledge.news. It's the home of the Forbidden Knowledge Network. We feature some of your favorite podcasts and content creators. We are booking guests for February. If you have suggestions or you'd like to be a guest, email me, forbiddenknowledgenews@gmail.com. Today I want to welcome back to the show Campbell. He is a content creator, speaker, and researcher. He runs the AutoDidactic YouTube channel covering topics including frequency, free energy, health, history, theosophy, and asking better questions. Campbell, welcome back. How you doing?
Yeah, good. Thanks for having me back.
It was great discussion last time you were on. Really looking forward to this one. Last time we introduced your research into Tartaria, some of the surrounding rabbit holes. Today, we'll get into what I believe is a related topic, disappearing people on a mass scale, particularly in China. And there have been some interesting reports from people that live in China that are in locations like Shanghai that apparently have empty streets. And unfortunately, we do live in an era where you can't really trust much of what you see online and social media, but it is a fascinating possibility. This may also connect with the Tartarian theme of cyclical resets, replacing the population. So I'm really looking forward to diving into this and hearing some of your theories. Before we do, remind the audience a little bit about yourself and let them know how they can find out more.
Yeah, I'm Campbell. My channel is AutoDidactic, so you can just search that. I do a podcast, Tartaria Australia, as well, once a week. And yeah, I've just been going down the Tartaria alternative history route, basically, for the last, probably 10 years now. So looking at, all the old buildings, the resets, the star forts, and all this stuff that we were never really taught about in school. So it looks like, they're sort of at least not promoting it, right? But, and at the worst, trying to keep it totally hidden from us. So, yeah, I'm doing that. And then obviously I'll get into all the other topics in this crazy world that we're in at the moment. The whole population thing, definitely, the celebrities, what's going on with celebrities and the politicians and all the craziness. But, like you said, it's, what can we believe anymore that's in the 2D world, especially with AI, like the recent AIs are just like crazy good. You can hardly tell the difference if you can at all. So, yeah, just trying to navigate my way through the apocalypse, right? The great unveiling.
Yeah. Well, you're in Australia. Here in the United States, there's heavy division, or at least there is portrayed heavy division on social media and through the news, based around the immigration issue, mostly at this time with ICE arrests and everything surrounding that. But how is it in Australia as it relates to politics, the divisive events and theater, the dialectic, create the problem, reaction, and offer the solution? How is it over there?
Yeah. I mean, I'm lucky because I live out in the country, sort of. I'm not in cities or anything, so it's pretty good where I am. But as far as Australia in general, it's pretty crazy. Our government's insane, like every other government, trying to enforce all these. Well, obviously the online ID was a big one. Australia was the first to do it for under 16s. But everything they're now linking, trying to link bank accounts to everything, get everything online. And of course, there's a big mass immigration problem here, as there seems to be everywhere else. You don't really see it unless you're in the cities. You definitely notice it, especially Melbourne. Melbourne is like crazy. Like it's lost,
Yeah.
man. Like it was during the lockdowns, it was basically one of the worst in the world, if not the worst. They were going around beating people up and stuff, and it's just yeah, it got worse and worse. And then of course we had the Bondi Beach incident.
Right.
And so that's now being pushed as a way for more ID. They need to identify everyone, know who you are. And also, they're doing another gun buyback because you used to be able to own guns in Australia, but back in the 90s, I think it was mid 90s, we had a big mass, bang bang at Port Arthur in Tasmania. And after that, they brought in basically the no gun law. You can't own a gun anymore.
Right.
There was this big buyback. And now they're doing it again, right? And if anything, that whole incident at Bondi sort of showed us that when you take all the pews off people, the only ones left with them are the criminals and the bad people. So like, how does that, So but yeah, they're definitely pushing the whole agenda that seems to be realm wide at the moment, right? It's definitely going all through Europe, like you said, America with all the ICE kind of stuff, and then all the information coming out about, migrants basically getting money from the government for this and that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a crazy place we find ourselves
It
in, right?
is. You mentioned the Bondi Beach incident. This is another one of those high impact events that, at least in the United States, we hear a bit about it as it unfolds, and then pretty much silence. It's left to the people that are doing their individual investigations to try and find information about what really happened. There was some speculation about crisis actors, even AI being used. Do you have any thoughts on that whole thing?
I think it was definitely orchestrated. I don't think that what we were shown or told is actually what happened. Got to be sort of careful of
Yeah,
what we
yeah.
say right on YouTube. But yeah, it's very interesting that it had a lot to do with the small hats. It was supposedly a group of them that were attacked by, another religious faith. And so they love to bring this division in there. And of course, from that, they've brought in all these laws that are, anti-hate speech, but they're only for, small groups, right? Like the small hats. I think Sikhs are in there. I'm not sure if Islam is, but it's not in there for Christians or Catholics. So the majority of Australians aren't protected. They've brought in all these laws, the anti, SE-mites, because they don't want us being able to talk about this stuff. Because I've noticed in the last, it's probably almost even 6 months now that people are talking about this and their influence on the world and on government, and a lot coming out of America, and Orange Man and his affiliations. So I think it's a reaction to try and slow that down. Another point of view, which is why we've kind of got to be careful, is they might be collecting all the data, right? And we've seen what's been going on in, especially the UK, right, jailing people for posting hurty words
Right.
online and their opinions. And so it could be that, right?
Has that been
Just
a
letting
thing in
people speak
Australia at
out.
all?
I mean, not really. I haven't heard of it. Definitely in 2020, 2021, they were over the whole jabby wabby. But no, I haven't really heard much of that in Australia, no.
It's crazy. There's a lot to pay attention to. It's difficult to navigate because, as we said earlier, we can't even tell what's real anymore. I brought up the possibility that if the military industrial complex and three-letter agencies have access to AI that is decades ahead of anything that we could imagine, who's to say that they weren't implementing that in a weaponized fashion to present events to us in the past, right?
Totally. I mean, totally. I talk a lot about the 2D world and the 3D world. Like there's been a lot of talk about the 5D world, and let's ascend to the 5D world. But I see it more as like I'm sitting here, I'm talking to you in the 2D
Yeah,
world, but I'm looking out the window at, you know, forest and bushland and everything. So that's the 3D world, and I really think that's the way out, right? Is, the 2D world, it's definitely been useful and could be, but it's just so controlled now that, like you said, we can't even believe it. And we know that by the time we get, tech, new sort of tech, they've had it for decades at least. So the internet is what, 30 years old, maybe,
mm,
for the general public. So I wonder if everything, as far as what the mainstream put out, all the news and all these events and stuff, it could all be AI from the start of the internet.
could be,
Like,
man.
we really have to think about this. We just don't know because, like I said, the AI that's coming out now, it's indistinguishable from reality.
Mm,
And we've seen some weird stuff on the telly, right, on the 2D world in the last five
yeah,
years, with masks and people's faces changing and all the celebrities going weird.
yeah,
And yes, it could be a good explanation for it all,
right.
right?
This could very well tie into what we'll be discussing today about the possibility that large portions of the global population are somehow disappearing off the face of the planet. This is one that I haven't spent much time digging into. I have seen a couple of videos presented from people who are actually in China filming the streets, showing that there is empty streets, empty buildings. And again, it's very difficult to navigate what's real and what's not, but it does seem to be real. I don't think it's AI generated. The gentleman is talking about how it's extremely different from just 10 years ago when the streets were seemingly full of people, and now the streets are almost empty. And this is based on few reports, like I said, that I've heard from people in China and otherwise, speculating that at the least the population is a lot less than they're telling us. What do you think about that?
Yeah, well, Kelly, who I do the Tartari Australia podcast with, she was actually there 2 years
Mm,
ago, and she went to India first, which is 1 billion people, and she said you definitely know there's a lot of people in India,
yeah.
right? Everywhere you go, there's people. And she said then they got to China, which is supposed to be 1.2 billion, and she said it was literally empty.
Mm,
She said there was all this infrastructure, like massive, 5-lane highways everywhere, but no cars on them. Big cities, no people. She said at night time there were no lights on. And yeah, they did the cities. They went out into the country through the villages, and they said it was empty basically. Like, so. Yeah, that's it's a very interesting topic, and there's a lot of discussion about how many people really are here, on Earth. They tell us 8 billion, right? But I've done quite a bit of traveling overseas, and when you do, you find that, when you're driving around, nothing's populated. It's only when you get to the cities. So we definitely don't have this overpopulation, that they're, obviously that's tied to the whole, changing of the climate and all that kind of stuff, and it's all our fault, and we must pay all this kind of stuff. But so, I mean, China's an interesting one, because it's the boogeyman,
mm-hmm.
right? China's the boogeyman, so they need to have a big population and be big and scary. But then we get the stories of the ghost cities.
Yes.
They say there's over 11,000 of these ghost cities, which are built for like 1 million plus people. What's that about? There's been stories that a lot of them have been crumbling because they were built so badly, and the story is that China just did it to give people work,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, spend trillions and trillions of dollars building all these cities for nothing? It doesn't make a lot of sense. But has it got something to do with repopulation? Are those 15-minute cities, right, ready for new people to come in? Because this is what we're seeing now. I get, like, all over the realm is this mass migration,
Yeah.
right? This changing of populations, and we're seeing it everywhere. And this is what we see in the 1850s, right? This movement of people around, especially the children, the orphan trains, all of that kind of stuff. So it looks like it might be a psychical thing that, the Allites do. just to keep us confused, right? Because they don't want us knowing where we are, when we are, and who we are, right? Keep us confused, take away all the information, right, by breaking the lines of stories, basically that used to be passed down, right?
Mm-hmm.
Once you're in a new land and all this kind of stuff, all these stories become irrelevant, right? Because stories are tied to the land where you are and your environment. So, I mean, it's an interesting one. Like you say, though, well, apart from, I know someone who's been there who I trust, but everything we see is in the 2D world, right? So I've spoken to a couple of people in the UK, and they sort of say, it's not as bad as it's being portrayed, at least. I've got one friend who says there's not really much going on, but I guess it also depends where you are. But there's definitely this, like Sweden is now less than 50% Caucasian. It became the SA capital of the world,
Yeah.
and UK has just taken that over from them.
Mm.
And this is on the back of all this stuff. So it's definitely, it's an attack. It seems to be aimed more at, people who look like you and me. But really, it's just to cause division. It's clashing two different cultures, religions, peoples together, and the problem is that the people they're bringing in are coming from war-torn countries, right? So, in the bigger picture, it's not their fault, right? They come from countries that the Allies have been bombing the crap out of for 50 years, right? So they're all completely traumatized. But that's the plan: bring it in, cause division, and get us to fight each other while they're in the background laughing and just going ahead with their plan. And I think that's really the biggest thing with all this stuff that's coming online, all, like the whole doom scrolling. There's so much information, right? But it's really replicated information. There's not that many stories. It's just replicated a lot. But they just want us to keep us interested in that, right? Keep us distracted, and they'll just keep going down their path. So, the only way forward for us at the moment is to understand that, everyone, all men and women, we're all on the same side, and they're the enemy. Like, your neighbor is not your
Yeah.
enemy. They might be in fear, they might be confused because they don't understand what's going on, but they're not your enemy. It's the people at the top that we all need to sort of turn on. And this is the thing, and everyone says it, but if that happened, they'd be gone instantly, right? They've got no power. There's not enough of them.
Going back to China for a moment, I want to put a call out to anyone that lives in China to email me and tell us about the situation over there. What have you noticed? Have you noticed less people? Is there people that you know that are missing? Are the streets empty? Are the businesses empty? Email me, forbiddenknowledgenews@gmail.com. Let me know what you're witnessing out there, what's your surroundings like, and if you truly think that there's less people, because honestly, the only way that we're going to really find out is from people who live there, or if we go there ourselves, and it's not that easy for us to make it out there. But as far as evidence for this, was there any other information that you came across specifically about China or the lack of people?
I mean, I definitely did a dive on it a couple of months ago, and there was a lot of videos coming out. The interesting thing from a lot of these videos was it was, natives of China walking around, and they were just sort of saying, "Where are all the people? The people have disappeared." So they noticed it, but no one was talking about people they knew that had disappeared. They were never sort of saying, "I went to work and 10 of the people had just gone," or my best friend they didn't seem to know the people that disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
Which is it's just an interesting little thing, right? Like, you would think if there was this mass depopulation that people would
Right.
know people who had disappeared. So I find that interesting. I'm not really sure what to make of it, but obviously there's the whole NPC theory that there's people here that aren't really, well, us, right? Aren't men and women. But what does that mean? Some people say, well, it's just clones without souls,
Right.
or Are they you can get into, I guess, simulation. Are they holograms? Which, if they were holograms, then they could disappear, right? So but it's just, I actually don't believe in simulation theory. I'm not a
Hmm.
simulationist, but that's, as far as China and what these people were saying, that seems to be, an answer that could make sense,
It's a
right?
very interesting phenomena that's happened since 2020. The world has changed so dramatically, and there seems to be fundamental changes to our reality, Mandela effects, if you will. Although it started before 2020, it seemed after there have been a lot more instances of what people understand as the Mandela effect, a lot more information just dropping off the face of the planet, changes to cinema and entertainment and books, and seemingly physical changes to things. So, this brings up a lot of questions about the possibilities of what happened since 2020. China seemed to be an important factor in that it was the first place that we saw reports of mass casualties, supposedly people dropping dead in the streets. And depending on the source you hear it from, some say that there were mass casualties. From what? Really, who knows? But there were tons of theories coming out about the amount of people that were dying in China. Is that related to this? Did they have some kind of mass depopulation event just in China? Then we can move here to the United States. And because of the amount of changes that we've experienced, a lot of people are not really leaving their houses anymore. A lot of people are using home entertainment, streaming services, delivery, so not really a reason to leave the house. And I've noticed less people on the streets in my hometown, but I couldn't tell you if that's just because of what I just said or if there are people really disappearing. This is another interesting one. And you mentioned driving across the country.
Mm.
I drove across the country quite often, and there are such massive areas with nothing. It's hard to imagine that the planet is overpopulated in any way. But as far as people disappearing on a mass scale, is there anything else that we can connect with this?
I mean, yeah. I mean, as far as what happened in 2020, I'm pretty sure that they're, hiding the numbers of what's really going
Hmm.
on.
Well, there's
There's
the
a few
jibbity
different
jab too.
sites out
Yeah.
there. Yeah, that's what I mean. The ones that are
Yeah.
dropping off from
Yeah.
that. We saw, a bit back in, what was it, 21, 22, of like young sportsmen, right?
Hmm.
Young kids basically dropping on the field, right? From heart issues. And there's been a lot more, sort of issues that people are getting, but now we're not hearing anything about it, right? So, with the numbers they give us of how many people took it, then you can just sort of deduct, right, that the number of people passing away from it is much, much higher. So that could definitely be a factor. And in China, definitely, right. As far as we know, they're a lot more controlled over there and a lot more compliant. So it wouldn't be hard to, off a lot of the population. But the whole, thing about people are now inside, like you said, you don't even have to go out to go shopping, right? You can even get your groceries delivered. You can talk to all your friends online. You don't have to go outside,
Hmm.
really. I mean, that's also a very good way to cover up if anything is happening, right?
Right.
Because we don't know. We're not going to notice. And like we say, there's less people out there. There's definitely less people in, like, shopping malls and things, right? And the movie theaters, but everyone will just say, oh, they're at home watching Netflix. Oh, they're at home on Amazon, right? I don't. So it's a good smokescreen if there is something big going on. But I mean, they've been telling us,
Mm.
right, for years. There's that famous, speech by Bill Gates, saying he wants to reduce it. The population. Of course, his parents they founded Planned Parenthood. We had what was it, that monument that got knocked over, the
Georgia
Georgia
Guidestones, yeah.
Guidestones that said, yeah, keep it under, what was it,
500 million.
500,000. 500 million, yeah, not thousand yet, 500 million. So, and you can find it in lots of other documents that they've written. So it's definitely an agenda of theirs that they want, or they at least want us to believe they're doing. But, I'd say that that's what they want. And so is this part of it, right? Like we just, like you say, with everyone living inside, we just don't know. What are we going to go and do? Knock on people's doors or walk around the streets at night and see how many lights are on it? It's just very hard to know what's going on at this
Well,
point,
I
right?
think that if we are slightly more observant, we can gather more information about this. I've been paying a little bit more attention to it in recent weeks since it's come to my attention, this possibility. And I notice in my own neighborhood, there are tons of houses for sale. There are tons of empty houses. I'm not sure if this is a normal thing for this area, but it seems to be more empty houses than usual. Businesses downtown, they seem to have a bunch of open businesses, but there's no one in them. There's no one shopping. So I don't see how these businesses are able to continue unless they're money laundering fronts, which I really wouldn't put it past them. But there is some things that I have noticed myself when I go out and about. There does seem to be much less people. I went to Reno a couple of weeks ago, and in the middle of the day on a weekend, going walk through downtown Reno, I'm not sure if it's normally that jam-packed in Reno, but there was no people on the streets. I noticed a couple of homeless people and then a few cars driving past, but we found it a little odd. I'm going to continue to make those observations. Like you said, we would never know if there are less people because it is the perfect smokescreen that everybody's online now.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. And, I've asked that question before, let me know what's happening where you are. And most people did say that they've definitely noticed less people. But, others said that, no, it was normal. But what I noticed is most of the people saying it was normal were in, more, cities and things like this, which, I think is obviously the plan, right? Because they've told us, right? We're going to own nothing and be happy with all these 15-minute cities. So, that's where the populations are being brought into the cities, and that's where, the populations are. But, you get out in the country, out of the cities, and it's definitely not overpopulated. And it seems to be a different, just a different almost world, right? Like the cities are really pretty bad now, but, we know that they're full of, 5G towers and who knows what else. They're clearly using, frequency weapons against us.
Yeah.
And we know they've got stuff like the voice of God, where they can literally put a voice in your head. We know about MK Ultra, where they can literally get people to snap and go into a different personality, basically, and then come out and not remember it. So there's all this stuff being, used on us. There was frequency weapons at the protests in Australia in 21. So, how far, again, if that's what we know about, how, what have they got? It's going to be at least decades ahead. So, I often think, do we even know what we're looking at, right? I believe that, we create everything, everything's energy essentially, and we're the ones putting it into form, right, through our thoughts and belief systems. And we know that's, obviously all the school, all the media, blah, 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 propaganda and programming gives us a version of the world, but are they able to alter things even further, right, with frequency weapons? Because, it's just an interesting question. Like, are we seeing one world and other people seeing a different world? Because we've seen the split, and they call it left and right, lefties and all this kind of
Yeah.
stuff. But they don't seem to be able to at all see what we're seeing. So is that because they are literally seeing something different? I was talking to someone and they were saying, what if all these, people who were, going crazy and supporting Biden and Harris back in the day, what if they were seeing clips and Biden sounded actually really intelligent and was making sense? But because, we saw the clips, and I'm not political at all, but I mean, come on. I still say that Biden and Harris were part of, they were the biggest part of Trump's campaign,
Yeah.
right? Because they were so bad, no one could vote for them.
Yeah.
But but people did. So are they literally we've heard about echo chambers online. Obviously the system, the algorithms are going to feed you back, what they think you're interested in. That's what we're told, what they want you to know, right? And they can, change your points of views and that. So if we take that a step further, our echo chamber is actually different. If it's all AI, they could just work out what you believe. Okay, this is a Biden person. We'll give them, the Biden intelligent videos and the Trump stupid videos, right? And then if you're on the other side, they
Yeah.
reverse it because this is what we're hearing when people are talking. Like the ones on the left are like, Trump's the worst thing ever. He's stupid. He's this. And on the other side, they're like, what do you mean? Trump's amazing. He's so smart. He's going to save the world. Biden, he's an idiot. Like he's got dementia. And
Yes.
they're like, what do you mean? He's smart. So I just think it's an interesting thought, right? Are we all inputting the same information, which then, gives us the reality we
Yeah.
see?
Well, there's definitely different realities as it relates to what we're interacting with online and social media. That's what I call the virtual world. As you were saying earlier, there's our real world, and then there's what we interact with online. But I do think that there are essentially different realities online based on what your interests are, what your political views are. They silo you into the echo chambers, as you were just saying, so that you have no idea what the other side is interacting with. You're only going to get the information that you normally interact with or that the algorithm thinks you're interested in. This unfortunately goes for shows like ours on YouTube and podcasts as well. We're siloed into very similar echo chambers, and the algorithm is not very nice to channels like ours. But going back to the possibility of different realities, this may also relate to the Mandela effect. I do believe that it's possible that there are multiple realities unfolding, and based on simple decisions or our perception, maybe that reality could change. But it's also been speculated that it can change on a mass scale, and there is some malevolent intentionality behind that. It would definitely make it easier to reset a civilization. It seems like they make these changes cyclically. They have massive resets, but they seem to have smaller ones even every decade where little bits of information is changed here and there. So the next generation has no idea what's their real history is. And we're in the middle of this right now. There's so much information changing and disappearing. As far as the Mandela effect goes, I think I heard this one on your channel, the Tiananmen Square tank man. This is an interesting one because this is one that I remember the guy being killed by the tank. And apparently there's some of the population that remembers it completely different. And now it is being stated that it was different and he was not run over by the tank. What are your thoughts on that one?
I remember him, being unalived.
Yeah.
But Kelly, again, she was there.
Oh,
Like Kelly from
wow.
the podcast. Yeah, like when she was, young with her family, they just happened to be in China and watching it. And she says 100% he didn't make it. So, but I definitely, remember, that he didn't make it. And I mean, a lot of people say, well, that's only online, blah, blah, blah. And, for things like that, you can kind of make that argument, I guess, because most of us, we only know about it through TV, right? Back in the day. But there's so many of these Mandela effects now, like that it's very hard to, like obviously the Berenstain Bears, there's books, there's hard, so it's not just the 2D world, right? The online world that's being changed. I mean, the one that gets me is C3PO. I mean, a lot
Yeah.
of them get me, right? C3PO's got a silver
Yep.
leg. I mean, and always has. But I know people like Martin Leedke, actually, he's got one of the old C3PO figures and it's all gold. So The Mandela effect is an interesting one. Obviously, most people sort of go to simulation theory. Well, it's a simulation, it's a computer program, so they just have to change some of the, code and it all changes. I don't think we're living inside a video game. I kind of see it as, like I said, I think everything's frequency. And I think as you're on different levels of frequency, you can see different things, right? You're aware of different things. And so I think that this could be what's happening is that, some of us here are moving up in frequency. And as we do that, we can see more, we're aware of more. We're in the apocalypse, right? The unveiling, we're starting to see what's behind the curtain, where other people that probably got the Jabberwocky and probably still believe that they can vote their way to a better world, they're on a lower frequency, right? Because they're much more in victim tyrant mentality, right? Everything's fight or flight, right? Everything's, yeah, victim tyrant. Where, once you start opening your mind and really seeing and really questioning, you get out of that because you start to see it's all a game and it doesn't actually affect you. And ultimately, you have the final decision over what world you're inhabiting, right? And experiencing. So I think, with the Mandela effect, if and this could be seen as timelines, people talk about timeline jumping. Is that just going up in frequency? So you're literally now in a frequency where that, if it's a timeline in the past, you've had less programming, if you know what I mean. So we're in this, we're raised with all this programming, but as we go up, that history starts to not actually have ever happened to you. So you can see further. You've got less programming in you. And is that also, for books like the Berenstain Bears, was the spelling, the one that we think is false, is that part of the program, right? Because it changes how you see things. And as we go up and we're deprogramming, we're starting to see things as they were in reality. So we see it as the original, that it was always like that. And, other people see the new version, what we would say is the new version, because they're still under the program. Because I don't think it's a simulation, but I definitely think there's an overlay. I call it the overlay, which these, whoever they are, elites, right, use. And my proof would be the education system,
Yeah.
the entertainment, it's this constant barrage of this is what the world is, this is what you must believe. And they know that makes us see the world in a certain way, which is why you see, some people walking down the street and they'll be having the worst day of their life and they'll be looking around, they'll be seeing rubbish and people arguing and person behind them is having the best day of their life and they're seeing kids playing and the sun's shining, right? Same street, two completely different realities.
Yeah. This also connects with the possibility of people being erased from reality with timeline shifts as well. And would we even be able to remember those people if they were replaced? Is that why we don't know people who have just disappeared off the planet? Because somehow when the timeline shifts and they change frequency, they're off to a different density or however you want to say, and we're still in this one, or vice versa. We are moving up in frequency and someone else is moving down or remaining the same. And does that mean we can no longer perceive them at all?
Yeah, it's a very good point. I mean, we have these things called ghosts. Are they literally the lower frequency or higher? Who knows? Like bleeding through that we can
Yeah.
sort of see. It's the same kind of concept, isn't it? And there's a lot of talk about, people who are sort of, on our thought wave, can't even communicate anymore with, normies. And I don't like all these labels, but the
Yeah,
public,
yeah.
right? And I've experienced it myself. You literally can't have a conversation with these people because they're on a different level, right? You're out of sync. Like it's all these words to do with frequency, right? And so, yeah, is that going to develop into, well, now I can't even see them, right? Are they going to, it's a very good question. And if that did happen and we go into a higher density or whatever it is, does that mean that new density or timeline, those people were never there? They were never part of it. and so we don't even remember them. I mean, I think it's definitely got to be, it's thrown into the court, right? Like we've got to really question everything at this moment because, the more we get into this, the more that we understand that we don't know
Yeah.
anything.
One thing I have noticed in my spiritual journey and my journey of awareness, that I attract like-minded people more than ever before, and the others that are on a different level seem to either be repulsed by my energy or I just don't come across them for some reason anymore. It's a very strange phenomenon. Even when I'm out going shopping, doing things in the world, I will come across people who have an interest in what I do. They have a level of awareness that's above what you'd expect from your everyday normie. And it seems that I'm coming across more and more of these people, which gives me hope that maybe it's just more people are waking up in general, or is it that we've done this shift thing?
Yeah. I mean, I'm the same. I never anymore really run into or at least get into a conversation or anything like that with anyone who's not at least aware.
Yeah.
That the closest would be if you go to the shops, right, and the teller's there, but you don't get into conversations and who knows. So I mean, yeah, it's again, have we moved up, and so we're now seeing a higher version, if you want to put it that way, of everyone, and is that depopulation? Is the place we're going just full of awake and aware people, which you would assume is going to be the case? Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, definitely, like 5 years ago, I still had a job, right? And I was, like I had one of those bosses, that wasn't very good. So I was around these people, and it was, you couldn't really say what you thought, right? Or you're the crazy dude. Like, that was only 5 years ago. Now I just don't even come into contact with people like that at all.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I know, there's a lot of people out there that still haven't found their tribe, shall we say. It's still, they're still finding that they can't speak. And so I think that's a big thing. We just all need to connect, right? We need more, time in the real world, right? In nature, talking to people, having real conversations. I think that's where the power really lies. And even in sorting out issues, right? And sort of going over theories. I think conversations are awesome because everyone's got a piece of the puzzle, right? Everyone's contributing. So, if you're out there and you haven't got a tribe, I would just say, ask for them. Just ask. Let me meet my people. Where are they? And, you'll start running into these people because, yeah, I just don't even, yeah, I don't see or interact with these normie people at all. I mean, I went, to Perth. I stayed with my family over Christmas,
Yeah.
and my parents are fairly awake. My mum more so, but they still think Trump's gonna, save the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then my sister and her husband, hi sis, if you're watching this, they still believe in the medical
Yeah.
system and things like this. And so, you've just got to choose your topics, I guess. I said a few things, and I was like, oops, change topic.
Yeah.
Because some people aren't ready, right? They're not going to understand what we talk about. They've got no reference points. Everything they know is the system and what they've been told. And my dad's he's in his 80s now, and highly educated. So all his friends are all these highly educated people, and you talk to them, and they just can't see anything, right? And half of it is because people tie their intelligence and their worth to how smart they are, to what they know. And if everything they know is what's been fed to them, then they don't want to let that go, right? Because then who are they and what do they know? So, this whole waking people up, I don't think you can wake anyone up. I don't think you've ever been able to. You may be the 54th person who said something to them, and that's been the bit of information that's made them go ding. But the other side of that is, do we have the right to wake anyone
Right.
up? Everyone's on their journey.
Yeah.
And what is waking up? When you think about it, I woke them up. All this means is I got someone to believe my point of view, right? So it's pretty ego based, but Yeah, it's an interesting world that we're in, and there's definitely, the divide is happening, and this has been spoken about. It started with Dolores Cannon, the whole split
Yeah.
in society that's going to happen. It seems to be happening, right? We seem to be seeing it and got evidence of this happening.
It is interesting. It's something that I'm definitely going to pay more attention to and get more feedback because, like I said, this is something that's recently come to my attention, the possibility that not only are we not overpopulated, which I was aware of for a long time, but we may have disappearing portions of the population, which is very interesting. So, again, anyone noticing this, anyone in China that you are noticing empty streets, lack of people, please email me and we'll try and figure out what the hell's going on. Earlier, you mentioned
Mm.
the weaponized frequencies. This is something I think the future is going to be very precarious to navigate. On every street corner here, we have new unidentifiable technology, sensors, devices, cameras, red light cameras, radars to track you, license plate cameras. We've even got cameras that can recognize your vehicle from a bumper sticker. So the surveillance state is growing beyond anything imaginable. But not only that, the possibilities that frequencies are going to be utilized as a control mechanism, maybe by law enforcement. We just heard about the witnesses from the Venezuelan invasion that claimed that we came in there with drones and AI weapons and frequencies that made people puke blood and were incapacitated immediately. And I don't doubt that for a second. We've heard this plenty of times with frequency weapons being used, Havana syndrome, voice to skull technology. How long until they're using it against the everyday people? Is it part of our infrastructure now? It's pretty interesting to see the capabilities that they have, but the question is, at what lengths will they go to utilize this stuff?
Yeah, I mean that was an interesting, story that came out of Venezuela. 20
Mm.
people, they say, US soldiers went in
Yeah.
and basically subdued over 200, right? And we had, yeah, like you said, all the frequency weapons. We've seen them at the protests, 2020, 21. We've got all the patents, voice of God, sort of technologies. I mean, they definitely want a surveillance state and their 15-minute cities. They want to be in total control, right? With AI as, the leader, no doubt. Uh, I mean, I always see the thing is people, have an idea, some people that they just want to wipe us out, right? And it definitely looks that way, right? With the information we've got about what they're spraying in the skies and putting in the food and putting in the water and putting in the medicine and all of this kind of stuff. But clearly, they've got the capability, or at least from what we know, to do that now.
Yeah.
Like tomorrow, they could reduce it to 500 million,
Hmm.
right? So why aren't they? Is the question, I guess. Um, I mean, first of all, at the moment, I'm living like God, a couple of hundred meters from a bloody tower, so going to move soon. But we do have some defense, right? We have things like shungite, orgonite, frequency generators that we can use, so we can definitely look after ourselves at least a bit. But what are they doing? It looks like a big game, right? And I often wonder, is that exactly what it is? Is this to wake us up?
Mm.
Because like we said, we can't prove a lot. It's all in the 2D world. It's all, especially now, it's all this encroachment of government control and monitoring us and collecting all our data. And it's everywhere. It's in washing machines, man. There's like Wi-Fi and stuff going on.
Yeah.
Is that all to get us to wake as many people up as possible, right? To get us to the point where we say no more, no more, because that's ultimately what we need to do, right? And we've been on this path for what, 5 years now? It's really been hyped up since 2020, and what seems to be happening, that at least I can tell from the people I meet, is people are becoming more aware, and they are saying no more, and they are looking into, things like the law, right? The LORE law, the actual law, and who we are, and, being men and women, and, not putting up with this stuff anymore. Like, there's a lot of talk about from America that I've heard, that because of everything that's been found out in the last month with all the immigration taking money, that people are just like, well, I'm not paying taxes anymore. And please don't pay your taxes anymore, because this is what we need to do, right? Starve the beast. But is this all just to get us to a point where we say, I'm not interested in it anymore, I don't consent, and through that we understand who we are and how powerful we are, right? Because we're clearly more powerful than the ones trying to rule us, if they even exist. They could all be AI for all we know.
Yeah.
Has anyone out there ever met Donald Trump or Elon Musk or Bill Gates? Do these people even exist? We don't even know. Could be just a big, show, right, to wake us up. And, I guess it depends, what is this experience,
Mhm.
right? I guess that's what we're all really looking for, right? That's the answer we want, is what is going on? Where am I? What's the point of it? You know, maybe it is just, if we are very powerful, which I think we are, maybe it's to train us to understand that. You don't want to send, amazingly, powerful superhuman type beings out into the reality if they can't control themselves, and especially if they can be used, right, by other people. So, is that what's going on? Is all this for us? Because I guess that's the ultimate question, right? Is this reality for us or against
Well, I
us?
can tell you that
You know?
our individual perception is going to dictate our experience of this world. And if we view the world as evil and a slave planet, that's probably the experience that we're going to have. And I think we are much more powerful than many would give us credit for. And we have the capability to essentially steer the ship in a positive direction based on how we're viewing things. And I think this is part of what's happening. More and more people are checking out from the anti human systems and agendas. And as their perception shifts, it focuses more on themselves and how to make their lives better and not participate in the system and the machine. And this has massive effects on the collective. So this very well could be a part of everything that's happening, is just a mass perception shift that we're just noticing things different. Maybe we're noticing different people now, like we were saying earlier, we're attracting different people. Maybe it's just the awareness of those things is acting as an attractor. It's very interesting, but I do think our perception is very powerful, and that we can essentially manifest a very positive reality depending on how we're viewing things.
Totally, man. Totally. Where attention goes, energy flows, right? We literally put our energy into what we're focusing
Mhm.
on. And, this is why I don't personally like simulation theory, is where it leads. Right. Basically, the premise is, you're trapped. None of it's
Mhm.
real. And so the thought becomes, it's a prison planet. Oh my God, how do I get out of here? So when you think of it that way, it's a perfect psyop as well, right? Is because it's people don't want to save the earth anymore, right? Because it's not real. It doesn't matter,
Yeah.
right? And this whole, everyone's an NPC is probably not a good thought pattern to have, because you put yourself above them,
Mhm.
right? Um, but it's so true that what we focus on is what we experience. If you think it's a prison planet, then you'll end up watching Alex Jones and all his rabbit holes, and you'll go down all these deep, dark things, and everything will be
Yeah.
bad. And that's what you'll see, because your brain, or your mind, I guess, always wants to prove you right. Right? We have this thing in our brain called our reticular activating system, and that's its job. It's the thing that when you want a new car and you're driving down the street and you want a new whatever, suddenly they're everywhere, right? You're seeing them everywhere. Does that mean that suddenly there's more of those cars on the road? No. All it means is that your mind is now pointing them out to you. And this is what it does with everything. If you believe the world is crap and it's a prison planet, that's what you're going to see evidence of, because it's going to be pointed out to you. Because, we've been told we get, so many millions and billions of points of information coming at us, but we can only process so much, right? So, and the opposite applies. If you see the world as a good place and it's happy and people are amazing and good things happen to you, well, that's what you're going to experience. That's what you're going to see. So a perception change is definitely what we need. And this is why they're amping up on all the fear porn. This is why, social media in general, it's becoming like AI, right? All AI can do is replicate, right? It can take something that humans have created, and it can jumble it up and make something else out of it. And this is what we see in social media with videos and all this stuff is the mainstream media put out a story, and then all the people go and replicate it. Put out the same story, right, with their face in front of the video or whatever it is. And so it makes it seem like there's so much more bad stuff going on because it's everywhere, right? But when you look at it, it might be 5 or 6 stories. Can we even prove that they're true? So I think as far as frequency, I think that's all done to try and keep us in a lower frequency, because I think the Elites like having slaves, right?
Yeah.
They like us doing everything for them, right? They don't want to do anything, and so the more people they can keep in a lower frequency, then, the more they're going to have in their new earth, if you want to put it that way, and the other people will be up in a different reality, but they'll still have their slaves. So I think, that's, at least that part of the game, whether it's, like what is it ultimately? I don't know, but I think I'm definitely getting to the point where I think it's all a show. It's all a show, right? Like we can just prove so little about this stuff. And we've got a lot of evidence of them faking stuff already, right? There's all these videos where they put out news stories of, all this death and destruction, and it comes out that it's from an event 10 years ago, or that it's completely contrived and made up. It's crazy, right? Like there's a lot of that evidence. So, I think, don't judge things as right or wrong, because that's just going to get you in trouble. I think it's just best to take on information. Well, that's interesting. Everything's interesting, right? And the more interesting bits of info you get, the more you can make a decision, the more you can build up your point of view. And in the end, that's all you can do. You can't build up someone else's point of view. So it's not got to do with, what does everyone else see or think, because that again is back into, group mentality, right? Like being part of the herd. So I think we've just got to self-educate ourselves, right? Be autodidactic, and get as many bits of information as we can. We can't make a decision unless we've got at least 3 points of view. We just can't. Anything less than that, and you're being told something, right? And that's back in the victim tyrant, right? That's politics, left and right. People think there's a difference. But, they even tell us that right wing, left wing, right? Two wings of the same bird.
It is difficult to navigate the level of theatrics that we're subjected to and try and discern what is real, what isn't real. You have to sit back and reach a point to where anything is possible with what we're witnessing, and it can be dangerous to get too deep down any particular rabbit hole, because you get too deep down and the paradigm shift crashes in on you. There may be no way back out. For the last few minutes we have, I'd love to get your thoughts on the UFO phenomena disclosure. What is really behind what we're seeing in the skies? If you have any thoughts on any of that.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, this is, again, last couple of years, right? It's been going crazy. We had all the drones coming out. With all that drone footage, I think that's probably, DARPA.
Yeah.
It's probably, military stuff, right? But then we have all these other, videos of like plasma looking balls, things shape shifting. I think we're looking at a lot of things. It's not one thing. I think definitely we've got the military aspect, the plasma aspect. I think as frequencies and energies rise, I think we're seeing more plasma, which could account for some of this stuff. We've seen all these big spirals in the skies, and the aura, what is it? aurora
Yeah.
borealis, way down near the equator and all this kind of
Yep.
stuff. But as far as aliens, extraterrestrials, I don't believe in space. I don't believe that narrative. I think, and we've actually just done on our podcast six podcasts on it. Are they coming from the ocean?
Mm.
Like this whole sort of new narrative has come out of USOs, right? Unidentified submerged objects, and a lot of footage. And I've spoken to someone like that I know who used to drive boats down to Antarctica with the scientific teams. He drove an icebreaker. He's told me he's seen stuff under the ocean, like domes with lights in them. He's told me he's seen stuff come out of the ocean. We have the whole narrative of Project High Jump with Admiral Byrd being down there and apparently getting in a war with flying saucers. We have the whole New Schwaberland as well, from the World War II, and they were going around the world looking for artifacts, and what are they called? Like possessions of power, whatever, like the Spear of Destiny and all this
Yeah.
stuff. And they were looking into the Thule or Thule Society. They'll be, that there's actually Thule is up on Greenland, Greenland,
Yep.
interesting, which is way up near the Arctic, which is a place we can't go. We also can't go to the Antarctic. Is this where, these strongholds of, aliens, people that aren't from here, is this where they are based? Is this where a lot of the technology is coming from? I don't know, but I tend to think that I mean, the sky, I think is, there's a high possibility it is water. So are we encapsulated by water? Are they coming up through the bottom to get into a pressurized system? Are all these things we see in the sky that they call meteors and comets? Are they, you know, submarines, right? I guess it wouldn't be spaceships, but people flying around. I think there's a big narrative coming out about the water. Are they coming from the oceans? And of course, they'll always tell us to look up, right? Like the mainstream always invert everything. They're always, oh, it's coming from above you, it's coming from space, blah, blah, blah. And then we did a deep dive into the gods, where do all these gods originate? And you wouldn't know, but most of them, they say, came from the ocean. When you start looking into it, even
Mm-hmm.
Enki, right, from the ocean. We have the Pope. The Pope's mitre is a fish head, right, which comes from Oannes, who was a fish god, right, back in the day. So even in our stories of the past, there's this big link to gods coming from the ocean, and they're the gods who come and they're like the fallen angels, right? Who come and they teach us stuff. They teach us all these skills and how to put on makeup and all these different
Mm-hmm.
things. Uh, if you really look into it, the original stories say they're coming from the ocean. So I think that's kind of where I am at the moment. What does that mean? Where are they actually coming from? Is there outer lands? Are they getting in? Is the ocean have no bottom? Because they tell us they don't know. They tell us they might know maybe 25% of what's at the bottom of the ocean. But it's an interesting story. We looked into where did the internet come from, and the first like telecommunications cable was from New York to London in 1854. This was before they'd even run cables down city streets. They haven't even tried it on land, and they run it. This is the story, right? They didn't have plastic. They coated it in sap from the rubber tree. All this, it's just a really weird story. So, we asked, well, did we lay that cable or was it already there?
Mm.
Like, where's this information coming from? Where does the internet come from? It's hard to get an explanation, a definitive explanation of what is the internet. Where does it come from? Uh, you know, is it coming from underwater? Because all of this information that we were given by different gods, creator gods, it seems to have all led here,
Mm.
right? All this technology to build up technology. And now we're at the point where we've got AI, we've got CERN, we've got quantum computers. They're all talking about alternative realms and, bringing gods and things in. Are we dealing with some kind of interdimensional, psychopath
Yeah.
who's controlling people, right? but can't be embodied, right? We have this narrative of disembodied beings. Is this what the robots and artificial, are they trying to bring their God
Yes.
into this realm? Like, is this literally what the whole plan has been? Is this why they introduced certain technology and we've been building it ever since? And they're just using us to build a world that their crazy psycho god can come into and
I've
control.
been talking about this often. If you look at how much technology truly benefits humanity, it's not really much. In fact, now technology seems to benefit technology more than anything else. It seems to be building itself up. What are your thoughts on the level of AI that we're dealing with right now and the implications for the future?
I mean, that's definitely the narrative, right? That it's all going to be, AI controlled, all electronic, all, ID, everything connected, and everyone in a 15-minute city. That's the narrative that we're being fed. I mean, with AI, again, we don't really know, right? I think what I presume or what my perspective is that the AI that we've got access to is basically an algorithm, right? I don't think it's got intelligence. I think people should stop asking it existential and spiritual questions and believing the
Yeah.
answers. Um, but that doesn't say that what their version is different. Like we just talked about the, is it some kind of interdimensional consciousness, right? That's come in here and messed everything up. Is that AI? Is AI a representation of that? Because I talk a lot about, that I call them the L-ites, the people of L, and what are they building? Electronic circuitry all around us, right? It's all electric, right? So AI is clearly lives in electricity. So is the actual AI that they have access or at least are talking to, is that conscious? And they're saying it's artificial. Well, it could be artificial to this, or it's living in an artificial space, but is it an actual consciousness? I don't know. In Islam and like sort of Vedic thinking, their devils are called the jinn, and the jinn are described as being created from smokeless fire, which you could, argue is electricity. Right. So is this what it is? Because like we've been saying, all this information we've been given and all this, building up to the being, the epitome of mankind, right? Which we are now, apparently. It's all been to build this electronic grid, hasn't it? So what is their end game?
Right.
Like, do we really think that they just want to be sitting on an island and we're here making stuff in polluted cities, or is there a bigger agenda here? Because we've all heard about the Elites and their parties and their rituals and all the stuff they do, right? A lot of sacrificing type stuff going on, and that's what we hear that the God of the Old Testament wanted, right? It's starting up, and then you can tie that to bloodlines, so that there is definitely a big narrative there that I think is worth looking into. But of course, with everything we look into, I think we need to think about results. Where is this leading me? If it's making you fearful, upset, thinking, making you think the world's a bad place, well, that's probably not a good
Yeah.
result, and it's probably the time to back out of that tunnel and find a better one,
Yeah.
right? That's why I like Tartaria and history, because it's not bad, right? It's actually, to me, it's more inspiring because we can see what is possible, right? But you go down all this, trafficking and stuff, and that can get very, very dark. So I'll definitely say to everyone, just, choose your rabbit holes wisely.
Very wise words to close out on. Campbell, thank you so much. Before I let you go, remind the audience how they can get a hold of all your content.
Yeah, man. AutoDidactic. It's written on the screen there if you don't know how to spell it. I'm on YouTube, Facebook. I'm starting to build up Rumble as well. I even got a few TikToks up. So just put it in and you'll find me.
Perfect. Campbell, thank you so much. We'll definitely be doing this again. And until next time, everyone,
Definitely.
have a wonderful evening. We'll talk again tomorrow. Watch Doors of Perception now on Amazon Prime. You can now stream the forbidden documentary Occult Louisiana free on Tubi TV. If you're looking to start your therapeutic microdosing journey, but don't know where to start, especially when looking for the highest quality ingredients, including nootropics, and what you'd expect from a true microdose capsule. Check out our friends at Brainsupreme. They offer the absolute highest quality ingredients so you can start your microdosing journey knowing that you're getting top-notch ingredients. To find out more, visit their website using that link right in the description, and you can get 15% off your entire order. Hello friends, I am so excited to tell you about Independent Media Token. Independent Media Token is a brand new way to show your support for independent media without having to donate a dime. Independent Media Token is a cryptocurrency on the Solana blockchain designed to generate funds to promote and foster the growth of independent content creators, allowing them to engage in their art without having to worry about being demonetized. Through a network of media partners, of which you yourself can become a part of, Independent Media Token's goal is to ensure the powers that be can never cut off all of our areas of funding and censor the only free voices left in the world. Join the movement today. You can pick up Independent Media Token using Phantom Wallet or the Solana wallet of your choice, where you can easily swap your Solana for IMT. Grab some IMT today and remember to always know your team. To learn more, visit independentmediatoken.com or use the link right in the description. Are you and your family prepared for an emergency? Maybe the fake alien invasion? Now is the time to prepare yourself and your family for any event. Check out Prep Starts Now. Their mission is to provide high-quality preparedness products that empower individuals and families to be ready for any situation. They're committed to delivering reliable, trusted gear to ensure your safety, security, and peace of mind in times of need. Their product selection is carefully curated to provide you with the essential gear you need to stay prepared. From emergency kits to tactical tools, every item is chosen for its reliability and practicality. Prep Starts Now understands the importance of family, and their goal is to equip you with everything you need to build a solid plan for your family's preparedness. In today's ever-changing world, being prepared is more important than ever, and Prep Starts Now is here to help you and your family stay ready with quality products and practical guidance. Use the link in the description and get 15% off your order. We live in an incredible age of information. More and more, we're discovering that we've been lied to and misled about much of our human history. Cory Hughes is providing profound revelations about World War I, World War II, the JFK assassination, Martin Luther King's assassination, and much, much more on his new Substack, Bloody History. Subscribe now for as little as $5 monthly. Just click that link right in the description to get started now and learn about our true history.